Lita, who lives next to Carmen there?
We were taking a picture.
No, we're doing a video. Go.
All right. So my name is Sable, and I'm talking today about the history of civilization and dogs and cats. And I'm wearing a kitty t-shirt.
Meow.
And I also brought, this is a black cat that I got at the Hollywood Magic Shop. It looks like it's a copy of the ancient Egyptian who had gods that were cats, and it's got a scarab collar and a golden necklace. And I had a black cat when I bought this, so I brought her with me to give me good luck. And I'm starting with cats because, as every cat lover knows, cats have to be number one. So, so the first indications of cats, they started later than dogs, was about 10,000 years ago when people started farming, and cats were attracted by, guess what, free mice. And they had granaries, and the mice were in there eating the grain, and the cats were attracted to eat the mice. And the people liked them, having them around, because it helped preserve their food. And gradually the cats just got tamer and tamer. In 7500 BC, which is almost 9,500 years ago, there was a cat buried with a human in Cyprus. That's one of the oldest burials of a cat and a human ever. In ancient Egypt, they were viewed as gods. If you killed a cat, you could be put to death. They also mummified a lot of cats, and even mummified mice to go with them, because they wanted to have a good afterlife for the cats too, like the pharaohs. And also in 1200 AD, the Pope said cats were linked to Satan, and they started killing all the cats all over Europe. And they killed so many millions of cats that the rats exploded. And the rats in their fleas carried bubonic plague, so the cats got their revenge, and everybody got bubonic plague, and they had the Black Death. But after that, cats were in favor of about 300 or 400 years later. So I'm just looking at my notes here. And they say that the cats domesticated themselves. That's the phrase they use for free mice. And gradually, people selected the tamer ones. But they were mostly outdoors animals, even when they were pets, because everybody knows who knows a cat that there's nothing worse than the smell of cat pee in your furniture. And people didn't really have them that much in the house until 1947. And that's when they invented kitty litter. So now people were able to keep the cats indoors. And in 1890, they invented commercial pet food. So it was easier to feed dogs than cats. And that's when they started moving more into the house as opposed to being outside. They all descended from the African wildcat, who was all tabbies, because they had to be in the jungle and mix in with the trees so that no one could see them when they were sneaking around. So they all started that way. And Queen Victoria had dogs, but she had 2 blue Persians. So in Queen Victoria's time, cats started to take off, and dogs too, as a household pet. They were a lot of, I don't want to talk about dogs just yet, but and in the Near East, now what happened in the ancient world was that cats in ancient Rome and in ancient Persia, the 2 oldest breeds are Persian and Siamese. In 1400, they had Siamese cats in Siam or Thailand. And the cats traveled on the ships, the Roman grain ships, when they were transporting their grain all over their whole empire. They had the cats on the ships to control the rodents. So they got off the ships and they spread all over the Roman Empire. And also, cats even came over with Columbus. In the New World, they came over with the Europeans, with Columbus and the Mayflower and the Europeans by ship, because it helped control the rodents for their food supply. And let's see, I don't, so in about 150 years ago, they started making cats into house pets, and they also developed different breeds of cats. 150 years ago, both dogs and cats, they started to breed them for pets. So they developed all these toy breeds. A lot of them were developed then. Not all, but a lot of them. They developed different colors of cats like we have today, and they started to become popular as pets. And they also were in the caravans of the Persian Empire. They would have a caravan and they would have jewels and spices in there going all over the Persian Empire, and the cats traveled with the caravan. So that's how they got everywhere that they got. So, and today, of course, we all love kitties, or some of us love kitties and some of us love doggies. And they're very popular. Now the dogs, I had, I'll go to the dog, and so the dog thing, the dogs also came for something that dogs still do today, table scraps, and they were also there for human food, and just like they do at your dinner table. And what happened was the dogs, even 30,000 years ago, they found a dog buried with a necklace of saber-toothed cat teeth. I mean, that's how long ago and that dog must have been loved because it was buried, specially with them. And, but 15,000 years ago, they're pretty sure they started domesticating dogs. And at that time, they were hunting. They didn't have farming. And the dogs were helping them with the hunting. And they gradually, as they get this free food, some of the tamer ones hung around more. And they gradually, the humans were relating more and feeding the tamer ones more. So natural selection just made them tamer and tamer. And the people liked them around because they were an early warning system for them. They could tell them if a big animal was coming or another tribe of people. And they also may have helped them with hunting too. So, and 10,000 years ago in Israel, they found, it's one of the oldest dog graves that they've ever found, 12,000 years ago. An elderly person was buried with a puppy. And the person's arm was around the puppy. And that was in Israel. So, and in ancient Egypt, the Pharaoh had his hounds for hunting. And I went to the King Tut exhibit, and I saw a 3,000-year-old dog collar, a leather collar, because it was so dry in the desert, the leather had been preserved. And it had hieroglyphics on it that said it was the Pharaoh's favorite hunting dog. So that was one of my favorite things in the King Tut exhibit. And then in ancient Rome, they had small dogs, and they had dogs as pets, and they also used them for hunting. And in another dog burial, and in America, they came over with the early Americans way before Columbus, and they came over the land bridge when they came over. And the Native Americans used them for the same things, except they also used them as beasts of burden because they were big dogs and they had no horses. So the dog would help them carry their teepees and when they had to move, and also warn them and help them with hunting. So, and there's an 11,000-year-old dog burial in Utah that they found. And it's really amazing that they even find any of this stuff with all the digging we've done for thousands of years. They're very rare, but they do find them. And in Egypt, the royalty, the purebred dogs, only the royalty could own them. They had jeweled collars. The dogs had their own servants. And if anybody besides royalty owned a purebred dog, they would be killed. And
the dogs are...
No, not the dogs, the people. If an underclass person had a purebred dog, they would kill the person, because only the Pharaoh was allowed these dogs. And
Did they say why?
well, it was illegal and punishable by death because only royalty was supposed to have dogs. Pekingese is one of the oldest breeds. In ancient China, the emperor of the dog was like a court official. They had their own servants, their own bodyguards, and they would take over the court, and if you were in court tried for something and the dog barked at you, you were guilty. And only the emperor could own a Pekingese. If a commoner had one of those dogs, they would also put them to death. And I wanted to talk about toy dogs because everybody loves the little dogs. All of dogs go back to the ancestor of the gray wolf, which in Europe is now extinct. And so they all go back to that common ancestor. But in the Middle East, there was a 12,000-year-old dog the size of a small terrier. They found a skeleton. And 500 to 1500 AD, only the wealthy have pets, and royalty could have small dogs. If you had to be very wealthy, because everybody was struggling for a living, so it was a luxury to have a dog that didn't do much of anything except keep you company. And actually, some of the dogs were healing, like they say dogs are therapy dogs. Well, in ancient Greece, they had healing temples and little dogs there that they thought were magic and would heal you of diseases. And also, let's see what else. I've got a lot of stuff here. The oldest breeds, some of them, are the Malamute, the Afghan, the Lhasa Apso, the Pekingese, the Samoyed, and Shih Tzu. And also Chihuahuas. Chihuahuas have a lot. I have a lot on Chihuahuas. In 100 AD, on some of the ancient Mayans, they saw drawings of dogs that looked like Chihuahuas. So they're a really ancient breed. I mean, that's 2,000 years old, except that, and don't be shocked, they weren't really pets. They used them for their fur and for food. And if they were sick, they thought they had magic powers to heal you, and they participated in religious rituals. They also used them to keep your feet warm in the winter because they would put the dog on your feet, Chihuahuas, you know. But they weren't, and in the United States, in the 60s and the 70s, small dogs started to take off. And in the 1990s, the Taco Bell Chihuahua made Chihuahuas very popular. And there was a big upsurge in owning Chihuahuas. And, one last thing, in ancient China, they had teams of eunuchs to take care of the emperor's dogs. Don't ask me why, but, and Maltese comes from the Isle of Malta. It's a very ancient breed, and they also believed it could heal, magic, and they were in the temples there. In 1500s, the Maltese came to England, but only the very wealthy could own them. In the 1800s to the US, Queen Elizabeth I and Mary, Queen of Scots, had small dogs that they really loved. Poodles are an old breed from 1400 in France, but they were bigger dogs. The little poodles didn't come around till later. And again, they came over with the Pilgrims. Let's see, there was one. Oh, and seeing eye dogs, I think, were in 1932. They started seeing eye dogs. And in the last 150 years, toy dogs have taken off, the little ones. People want them as pets. They can have them in the house. They can feed them canned food. It's easy. And there's been a big explosion in the last 150 years of all the different breeds, and also in cats. So, and now we love dogs and kitties because they make us happy and they make us smile. So, that's it.
All right.